Right, I know I reviewed this once upon a time, but here's a not-so-fun fact for you. When I first covered Streets of SimCity from 1997 on here, it was 2010. Meaning more time has passed between now and that review than there was between that review and the launch of the game. So I say it's high time for a fresh LGR retrospective on Streets of SimCity, developed and published by Maxis Software in August of 1997. It's your city to cruise through or bruise through. It's mayhem in your metropolis. Check out your SimCity 2000 cities from the perspective of 5 vehicles, equipped with all manner of deadly weaponry. Streets of SimCity took destroying your simulated cities to a whole new level, street level. And golly was I sold on this hard back then. My lifelong SimCity obsession is well documented by now, with a particular high point of interest being SimCity 2000. As a kid, I frequently imagined how my cities might look from street level. And due to Maxis' online teasing of a full 3D version of SimCity 3000, I was beyond hyped for that imagined realism to become reality. Of course, that version of SC3K was delayed and ultimately cancelled, but Streets of SimCity arrived in the meantime to tide me over, alongside everyone else, with journalists calling it out as a stopgap until the eventual release of 3000. Though if you know your Maxis games, you'll know we already got SimCopter in 1996, which is where the whole explore your SimCity saves with a vehicle in 3D concept started. Streets of SimCity was built using an enhanced SimCopter engine, largely consisting of similar assets and physics, for better and worse. But I was always more into virtual driving than flying, so seeing this slick 3D rendered box art with missile launchers and exploding cars spoke to my very soul. Likewise with the magazine ads, with excellent hand-drawn art that suits the game perfectly, and that edgy 90s marketing that was wildly out of character for Maxis. That aspect alone was intriguing. They were the lighthearted software toys folks that made goofy little ant colony simulators. Now all of a sudden it was all carnage and machine guns and middle fingers, while still receiving a KA for all ages rating somehow. And check out that pre-release box art. Much like the ads, I always thought the 70s movie poster vibe fit the game better. Maxis must have changed it at the last minute, because retailers were still using the old box in the earliest advertising of the game arriving in stores. And Maxis haphazardly changing their mind was par for the course in 97. The company was in a really weird spot then. They had so many ill-advised projects in the works, from RPGs to sports titles to puzzle and adventure games, all while consistently reporting quarterly losses. Most of these projects were scrapped, but Streets managed to avoid the axe, ending up as the final Maxis-developed game to release before Electronic Arts took control. Although some hold the opinion they should have cancelled Streets too. Reviewers were not kind in their assessments, calling out, practically everything as being subpar at best and completely broken at worst. SimCopter had its fair share of stability issues and wonky physics, but Streets, it took things to another level of brokenness, catching even longtime Maxis fanatics off guard, myself included. So the resulting review scores were abysmal, with Computer Games Magazine being a typical take, calling it a somewhat guilty pleasure but ultimately one to avoid, giving it just 1.5 stars out of 5. Hey, still a half-star better than Test Drive 4 got on the same page. Yeesh. Anyway, here we are, over a quarter century later, with a lot of hindsight in the rearview mirror, along with landmines, oil slicks, and smokescreens. So let's dive into this again 27 years post-launch, starting inside the box, which reveals a 13-page technical reference booklet going over Windows 95 troubleshooting. Next, a keyboard command chart well worth keeping around due to some of the game's more obscure controls. And a black and white instruction manual, surprisingly containing 100 pages, delving into greater detail than is really necessary for a title like this. There was no need for a strategy guide with a manual of this depth, going into every single item and mechanic in the game, what they do, how to best use them, and more. But that's just the first half. The rest of it is basically a reprint of the manual for the SimCity 2000 Urban Renewal Kit, a program that functions as the game's map editor, seeing as Streets relies on SC2K's city files for all its tracks. And finally, we have a jewel case containing the game itself on CD-ROM, something I'd normally use to install and play, but not today. Because in 2019, software engineer Alexander Krimsky graciously did the dirty work of gutting Maxis's 3D game engine and swapping out the worst bits with modern code, leading to both SimCopter X and SimStreets X, programs that patch the games to install and play on modern Windows, as well as getting rid of ancient DRM and bugs while improving resolution and stability. So while the streets of SimCity are still a mess, they've at least been swept and tidied up a bit, and it's now the best way to play on both new and classic systems alike. For the latter, you just might have to install it on current Windows first, then copy over all the files to Windows 95 or 98. We first hit the streets with that ominous Maxis logo, and a wood-grain console television overlay, then an intro immediately conveying the game's aesthetic. Which is that of a 1970s TV show, complete with a colorful cast of characters, slow-speed car chases, and a funky soundtrack, but through a decidedly late 90s lens. Unlike Interstate 76 or Driver, for example, which fully embraced the 70s time period, Streets of SimCity uses it as more of a jumping-off point for its own bizarre reality. Still, the funkiness continues in the menu with one heck of a groove. From here, you're free to begin a career, load a saved one, play multiplayer, jump into customizing cars, or pick player's choice, the game's
practice mode,
where you can select a SimCity 2000 save game and drive alone or against the CPU. Whatever you choose, the next step is entering the garage, where you select a car and deck it out with all the kit you can afford. Something we'll come back to, but for now, just cruising around, this was the good stuff right here. Just a nice, relaxing, totally normal drive with perfectly realistic physics. Heck yeah, Streets of SimCity in all its glorious awfulness. This was a janky glitch fest when it was new, and it remains so today, even with patches applied. What you see is what you get on both new and old hardware alike. For reference, I'm playing on an overachieving Windows 98 rig with a 2 GHz Pentium 4 and a 64 meg GPU, and using software rendering, since I've come to prefer it over the 3D accelerated option, which utilizes the 3dFX Glide API. Take a look at this side-by-side comparison. It's kinda wild how much running Streets on a Voodoo card changes the whole feel of the game. Sure, you get that signature texture filtering and smoother frame rate, but you also get less saturation and odd lighting with dark black shadows across entire surfaces of buildings. It also makes geometry on vehicles more pronounced, with visible polygons showing through textures, and while there's a nice fog effect on the horizon, the draw distance is actually a bit lower too. But the worst trade-off is that all of the particle effects and sprites with transparency have this black, inky stroke effect surrounding them now, making explosions, sparks, smoke, and so on look far worse than software rendering in my opinion. That said, no matter what it's played on, Streets never really looks that great, or runs great, or plays great, or sounds great. Well, that last one's not entirely true. The sound effects mostly come from stock sound libraries, so there's not much to praise, though it sure fits the whole retro TV show theme. But the in-game radio, now that's another story. Not only do you get to dial in different stations for different genres, but each one has its own radio DJ, along with tongue-in-cheek commercials.
Sim Jazz. Tunes, but we ain't telling. Ads, but we don't know them. Emergency messages when it all hits the fan.
Darn! I want to read the weather report, but I can't find a Picayune anywhere.
I used to have that problem, but not anymore. I get the Picayune delivered to my home now.
The Picayune has home delivery? That sure would save a lot of time.
And it doesn't cost much more than finding them in the trash.
Techno Sim Esoteric.
I know it wasn't the first game to do this, even SimCopter had a radio, but Streets was my first experience. Distinct radio stations, charismatic disc jockeys, absurd ads for in-game companies. Yeah, Streets predated Grand Theft Auto by a couple of months, and I didn't play that till years later, so this was awesome. And then the music itself, man, it is top-notch. A compilation of jazz, funk, rock, bluegrass, and techno that goes far harder than it needed. Such an eccentric soundtrack to this day, with tracks from go-to Maxis collaborators like Mark Russo, Jerry Martin, Anna Carney, Jonathan Hoffberg, and Dix Bruce. Which I know, since you get the full music credits in the manual, always nice to see in a game of any kind, alongside all the song lyrics for the tracks that have them. I'd play more examples if I could, but it all gets copyright flagged on YouTube, and I get why, since it's been re-released officially by EA as original music from Streets of SimCity on music streaming services. That album is annoyingly incomplete though, specifically missing two of the most classic tracks, Czar and Splatter.
Get out of my way, 'cause I'm having a bad day. The car's in the driveway, but I'm walking sideways. You're a Czar when you got a kick-ass car.
Just a splatter, splatter, splatter on the windshield of light. Just a splatter, splatter, splatter on the windshield of light.
That last one is by the late Dix Bruce, by the way, who was a prolific musician and teacher, known for tons of compositions and over 50 books on learning banjo, guitar, and mandolin. May he rest in peace. His tracks for Streets of SimCity and The Sims continue to bring a smile to my face and get stuck in my head, along with the rest of the soundtrack, really. And a lot of that stems from the sheer loneliness and desolation in Streets, especially in Player's Choice mode. A SimCopter had all kinds of Sims and traffic scattered about the city, but not so here. The radio is your one constant companion, about the only sign of humanity somewhere out there in this weird empty world. Other than the occasional cow, I guess. Oh, and of course, the game's lone pedestrian, a bald guy in blue clothing holding a box, who's found aimlessly wandering the world. You can't hit him, you can't shoot him, you can't communicate with him. The only thing he gets to do is wave at you if you happen to have a package delivery, but other than that, he just skulks around forever, waiting for packages alongside his endless identical package-hungry clones, like some kind of purgatory for bald guys with an Amazon addiction. And there is no escape, not even leaving the city limits. Go beyond the map's edge, what the manual calls the wilderness, and you'll soon loop right back around to the other side. Even the day-night cycle is disconcerting, in that there isn't a cycle at all. Instead, you simply swap between day and night with a keyboard combo. Not great. But you know what was great? Being a kid and not giving a crap. Player's Choice mode in Streets of SimCity ate up countless hours for young me, and is by far the way I spent the most time with this. I thought career mode sucked, and being able to drive around my own cities was a literal dream come true. Although I did wish for a better car selection, with only 5 available to the player, and the main differentiators being performance, hardpoints, and cargo capacity. But still, street-level city viewing was just the most immersive thing to me, even more so than Simcopter's aerial viewpoint. And I loved discovering all the 3D versions of recognizable buildings, with every 2D building graphic from SimCity 2000 represented, with more detailed textures than Simcopter. Plus trains, boats, and aircraft. It doesn't look like much in hindsight, but dang, this was neat. And naturally, you can shoot and demolish practically everything, provided you're packing heat. Getting strapped happens in one of 3 ways. First, your car may come equipped with weapons already, either if you load a vehicle you've already modified in the car factory, or you're playing a scenario with a pre-modified vehicle. The second way is by grabbing pickups, which provide ammo, armor, repairs, fuel, and gadget batteries, but there are also packages, some of which instantly give new weapons. Although most packages are silly items meant for delivery somewhere in town. And the third way brings us back to the garage, which you can enter any time by coming to a stop within a gas station. The garage is a fascinating mechanic, no pun intended, essentially providing a pit stop safe room that pauses any ongoing action outside. Reload, refuel, and repair, and perhaps make some choice upgrades if you have the funds left over, all while this excellent music plays, properly setting the mechanical mood. So each vehicle has a set number of upgrade slots, and these can be populated with faster engines, armor plating, different tires for different situations, plus all your firepower. Machine guns and missile launchers are the forward-facing weapons. Then in back you can add mine layers, oil slicks, and smoke screens. Then there are gadget mods like radars, shields, and goofy stuff like the airfoil and the hopper. Those last 2 going into the realm of campy sci-fi, launching your car into the sky and letting you hover and fly around like something out of Back to the Future 2. It's fantastically dumb, and when engaged, is the most intuitive controlling part of the game. Being based on a helicopter sim, I guess that makes sense. But on the ground, Streets of SimCity is deeply strange when it comes to moving. On first taking the wheel, things feel all out of whack, under and oversteer occur unpredictably, and there's little sense of physical connection to the road. It's simultaneously grippy and slippery. Until you look up all the keyboard commands and it begins to make sense in a screwed up Streets of SimCity kind of way. Like, check this out. Pressing Shift plus up engages a power boost. Pressing Shift and down is for power braking. And performing an automatic 180 happens by pressing Shift plus down and either left or right. Then you have strafing, for some reason, by pressing Control plus a direction while moving, and then an extremely cart-like power slide drift maneuver is engaged by holding Shift while turning. Combine this with resetting to a random location by pressing F10 or holding Control to align to the nearest road, and there you go. Most of the steering iffiness and collision glitching is addressed by utilizing these combos. So get familiar with all of them before diving into career mode. I tell myself in retrospect, since I completely forgot about these while capturing most of the rest of the footage. Whoops. Anyway, career mode. These missions are separated into 5 channels on the TV interface, with each channel offering up scenarios presented as episodes of a television program. According to page 16 of the manual, you're simply playing a stunt driver for the studio, and you aren't actually shooting people left and right. It's all Hollywood magic, but I prefer to ignore that, because out of context, the Streets campaign is absolutely unhinged. It has you going on lengthy killing sprees, dealing with religious fanatics, domestic terrorists, dirty cops, shady government operatives, nuclear meltdowns, not to mention placing bombs to blow up the city at the behest of a power-mad mayor and raiding drug dealers to collect heroin. Like straight up 500 kilos of smack, no beating around the bush. And you'll also be enduring the actual apocalypse in the very first mission, which has you driving around a yellow Beetle picking up and delivering packages in a post-apocalyptic wasteland while machine gun-wielding raiders try to kill you and steal your stuff. Like I said, Streets of SimCity's career is unhinged, and I love it. Or, well, I love the idea at least. This is still the game that it is, and it is crashy and unstable as balls. Less so with the Krimsky patch, but I still had an annoying time, and not only because of the crashing, most of the career is just poorly conceived, seriously undercooked, and even wildly unfair. Stingy time limits, vague objectives, overly armored AI that turns on a dime and shoots with inhuman precision, and a tiny, barely useful mini-map with no pointer or anything showing where to go most of the time, which is frustrating on huge maps. And the truly awful camera angles don't help at all. The in-car cameras are good for precise aiming, but don't show enough of what's going on around you, making it harder to keep enemies in your sights while they flail around shooting you in the butt. And all the external cameras constantly zoom in and zoom out, way too frequently and too far. Plus they run into viewing angle and collision issues when you're near other drivers and buildings, which is basically all the time, because that's the game. Other than that, Streets of SimCity is kind of awesome. The career may not provide a whole lot of meat, but it's fine. I make my own meat. Skark meat. As mentioned earlier, it came bundled with a copy of the SimCity 2000 Urban Renewal Kit, which previously was sold as a standalone program for editing SC2K artwork and maps. But that also makes it an ideal editor for Streets, since every location in the game uses city save files to determine its layout. So every street, every hill, every building, every body of water, it all stems from SimCity 2000 map data, so creating your own maps is a cinch. As for creating actual tracks, that's where the Streets of SimCity race course editor comes in. Now, this lets you pick which roads in your city act as a track, where the starting line and checkpoints are placed, and some specifics on things like the number of laps, number of opponents, their skill level, and so on. It doesn't let you create any of the more involved objective-based scenarios from the campaign though, only straightforward racing circuits, which is unfortunate because the racing is easily my least favorite activity in Streets. And there's some gameplay even guns can't fix, and in fact, arguably make kinda trivial. Just immediately shoot and explode everyone, then boringly speed through the rest of the laps by yourself. I assume that the 8-person multiplayer mode would have been much more engaging, which is done locally through serial or LAN setups, or online through direct modem connections, but I never knew anyone else who had this game to try that. And finally, I've got to mention modding. As a kid, I quickly learned how easy it was to mod Streets due to it using everyday uncompressed unencrypted files, 8-bit bitmap files for textures, 22 kHz wave files for sound, smacker video clips for animations, and so on. Simply by poking through the folder structure, like I did with every game, I discovered I could create my own custom paint jobs and modify the sounds for almost everything in there. The manual does actually mention you can make custom radio stations, but it doesn't tell you about all the other stuff you can modify, so I felt special. Though I just discovered there were fan sites with custom vehicle skins. No surprise really, this stuff was easy. Heck, even that one single pedestrian dude can be swapped out for an animated Doom guy or whatever. All you need is a compatible late 90s copy of rad smacker tools, and you can encode little video clips that function in Streets, so long as they adhere to the expected resolution and color palette. Good times, man. Shooting cows. And that's about it for Streets of SimCity, 27 years later. And you know what? As objectively busted as it may be, the fact is that Streets has never fully left my brain. It's always somewhere in the back of my mind for one reason or another. Typically it's the soundtrack, but seriously, for whatever reason, I find myself craving to revisit its glitchy madness and drab, lonely landscapes again. Which then leads me to going down a late-night research rabbit hole and finding releases I forgot about or never knew existed. For example, the CD-ROM Classics budget re-release from EA was pretty common, as was the SimCity 2000 Combo Pack, bundling both games together in a folding gray box often sold in Walmart stores. And of course it was crammed into shovelware packs like Ultimate Sim and Sim Mania to clear out warehouses of unsold stock. But did you know Streets got a Scholastic Book Fair release? I wonder how many discovered the game that way. Or how about this big box Japan exclusive with Japanese text all over the packaging? As soon as I saw this, there was no way I could resist importing it. Streets content even made its way into one of those X-Media publishing packs titled Simclusive, filled with fan-made custom content slapped onto a disc for a quick profit. Yeah, anyway, all that to say that I find Streets of SimCity unusually captivating despite an objectively better game existing, SimCopter. By comparison, Streets is cramped, twitchier, more difficult, and the physics barely work for vehicular combat. Yet I came to oddly appreciate it. This is a special breed of so bad it's good. When something's so inherently messy and unstable, why waste time wishing it wasn't? I say just accept and enjoy it for what it is. And if you enjoyed, check out my other Maxis game retrospectives or many more things from the last 15 daggum years, or stick around for new videos in the works with early access to future episodes through LGR YouTube memberships by clicking the join button. And thanks for watching.